Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is just a really quick announcement video because I have just started a new podcast. The podcast is all about Harry Potter, obviously, and it's called Have a Biscuit Potter, which, in case you're not familiar with Harry Potter, is a quote from the best character in Harry Potter, Professor McGonagall. That is Minerva McGonagall, who my cat is named after. I mean, really, this was the announcement. I could end the video right now. I probably should end the video right now because I really have to go to work, like, soon. But I just wanted to explain why I'm starting a podcast, why it is this podcast, and just some thoughts I've had recently about creating content as a sort of hobby and as a creative outlet. I know it's kind of cheesy to say that I've always been a creative person, but I've always been really into music, first listening to music and then playing an instrument and then later songwriting as well. And that's always been my way of kind of creating stuff, I guess. But since I started studying music at university, which is now, wow, that's almost 10 years ago now, when I first entered a university building with the intention to study music. Since then, music has very much shifted from being a creative hobby to being a job. And I now don't listen to music anymore, or very, very rarely listen to music. I don't make music anymore. I don't perform music anymore, really, except on very rare occasions. And every time I talk about this, I get kind of sad thinking, well, where did this love for music, where did this passion for music go? But really, I'm kind of okay with it, because just because music has become my job rather than my hobby doesn't mean I enjoy it any less. It just means that I don't enjoy it in my free time. And that creative outlet has very much been replaced with BookTube, which I only started last year. So between when I started studying music at university and when I started my BookTube channel a year ago, I didn't really have any creative outlets. I didn't really write anything, I didn't make anything, and I really missed having that process of making something. I tried various things. I tried knitting, really bad at that, woodworking, really bad at that, sewing, don't even get me started. So when BookTube came along and I discovered that I really like talking about books, that was amazing. That was really good. As well as the talking about books bit, I learned a lot of skills. So for example, the skill of talking to a camera. That's not something that we're born with. That's something that I'm learning every time I record a video. The skill of taking a raw video and turning it into an edited video. Definitely something I'm still learning. I never thought that I would be able to do weird things like putting music in the background of a video, or putting a little picture in the corner where there's not really a picture there. I mean, this is basically magic right here. Hello, Minerva. Cat. So, editing. Something that I definitely would not have learned without BookTube. I briefly spoke about this in my last vlog, but there is a difference between a hobby that costs you effort and work and that you then have some sort of product to show for at the end of it, and a hobby that just requires you to sit there and absorb something. So for example, reading, watching television, going to things like events, theatre, whatever, that's all very passive hobbies, which doesn't make them bad hobbies. I mean, I love all of these things, especially reading, obviously, but also television. I watch a lot of TV. So I'm not knocking that as a hobby. It's a really, really great way to relax and recharge. But then there is a different way to relax and to recharge, and that is actually putting passion and love and labor into something that isn't passive, that requires you to actually spend energy on. And I don't know how this works physiologically, psychologically, but when you have something to show for at the end of this process, it gives you a satisfaction that you don't get from watching TV or reading a book. So I'm very conscious now of having these two streams of creative process. And now, as well as doing BookTube, I'm adding a podcast to it. So first of all, why a podcast? I have listened to podcasts for years. It's my main form of audio entertainment. Definitely listen to more podcasts than I listen to audiobooks, and I listen to a huge amount more podcasts than I listen to music these days. So podcasts have always been with me, and one particular genre of podcast that I love is the Harry Potter podcast. Yeah, you wouldn't think about this as a genre, but I'm subscribed to about a dozen Harry Potter podcasts and listen to all of them regularly. That means that every single day I am listening to a Harry Potter podcast. That because I'm subscribed to so many, there's always a new episode of something to listen to. And I just really enjoy Harry Potter because it is something that I'm so familiar with. On the one hand, there's the nostalgia factor. You know, listening to people talk about Harry Potter reminds me of when I first discovered Harry Potter, when I started reading those books. But it's also just the pure sense of familiarity with the subject matter. I know all of Harry Potter. There is no single chapter in Harry Potter that I've forgotten about. There's no character that I don't know. It's a very, very familiar world to me, probably more familiar than any other fictional universe, any other place. So listening to podcasts about Harry Potter is just very comforting. It's a comfort listen. I love it. And the podcasts that I listen to are very varied. There are some that skew more comedic. There are some that skew more academic. There are some that discuss Harry Potter as a cultural phenomenon. There are some that discuss Harry Potter as a literary phenomenon. And all of these things I just love. So about 2 weeks ago, I got the sudden urge to reread Harry Potter. And that happens regularly, and probably about once every 18 months I pick up the Philosopher's Stone and start reading the series start to finish. And this time I thought I really should do a podcast about it. This is completely unnecessary. We don't need another Harry Potter podcast. There are a lot of really wonderful Harry Potter podcasts out there already, but I want to do one. And podcasting has always intrigued me as a form of entertainment as well, just because, like I said, I listen to podcasts a lot. This also coincided with my husband getting a new microphone from me for his birthday. That means that I have the technology, I have the Harry Potter books, and I believe I have the knowledge and the passion for Harry Potter to make a good Harry Potter podcast. So now I have recorded the first 3 episodes, and they are all available online, linked down below, of course, so you can find the link to the actual podcast feed. It's also now available on Spotify and Google Play, and I am working on making it available for Stitcher, iTunes, whatever else is out there. It's going to be available on where you get your podcast. So if you're interested in listening to that, just follow the links down below. There's also a Twitter account connected to the podcast, and there's also an Instagram account connected to the podcast, both linked down below. The Instagram is currently empty. I have this wild idea of making it into a Professor McGonagall inspired fashion Instagram, but I haven't quite figured out the technology for that. I haven't quite figured out where to take pictures of myself wearing interesting clothes, so we'll get to that if I figure that out. But definitely check out the podcast and check out the Twitter account. I really should have taken some notes for this because this is all over the place. So the podcast is going to be a Harry Potter chapter by chapter reread. So for every chapter I will make an episode talking about that chapter. The podcast is going to be full of spoilers, so please only listen to it if you have actually read Harry Potter, because otherwise you will ruin your first reading experience of it. And secondly, it is a podcast for adults, so there will be swearing, there will be discussion of adult themes, both in sexual nature, but also maybe some of the more violent, some of the darker sides of Harry Potter as well. I'm hoping to make it as entertaining as I can. It is only me talking. I do not have a co-host, unfortunately, but then part of the reason I'm starting this podcast in the first place is because I really want to talk about Harry Potter, and I don't have anyone to talk about Harry Potter to, apart from Minerva. So that's all I have to say, really. That was my announcement and my brief musing on creative outlets. I would like to know from you if you are a Harry Potter fan, if you are interested in a Harry Potter podcast. I know there are a lot of them out there, so I'm not expecting this to be a success by any measure, but we'll see. I also want to know if you have a creative outlet that differs from your other hobbies like reading or watching television, and what it is. Also, if you have any good recommendations for other Harry Potter podcasts, please put them down below. Chances are I'm already subscribed to that podcast, but still put it down below. Maybe there is one or two that I'm not subscribed to. That was it. I really have to go to work now. Thank you for watching. Bye.